Please rise as you are willing and able for our hymn from the Gray hymnal number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
We bid you welcome. In this community of radical inclusion, we make space for what you believe and what you love. Your whole self is welcome here. In this community of open-hearted inclusion for all people, we do not expect you to think a certain way or restrict yourself to one set of beliefs. We only ask that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with a dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. We are so grateful that you are here today. My name is Jessica Sanchez, and I am your service leader today. My pronouns are she, her. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us, whether you're enjoying the service in person or watching online. Today, we are very fortunate to have a guest speaker, Gregory Smith, in our pulpit. I will tell you a little bit more about him later in the service. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. After the service, we invite you to stay for coffee and conversation downstairs in our reception hall. Please take a moment now to silence your phones, but we do encourage you to share your presence with us today on social media. And for announcements, I don't have a lot of announcements today, so I thought if there are any committees that do have announcements, you can come on up and maybe give some announcements. I did want to say that the service on August 10th, in 2 weeks, is going to be at Northwest UU. And then we also have our fall picnic coming up on September 14th, and that's going to be at the Novi Rotary Park. I believe it's going to have hot dogs and things to eat, but also it'll be a potluck. So if you have a dish you'd like to bring, and it's delicious, please do. So there's not going to be a Sunday service that day also.
Just a quick announcement. This is the last day to buy duck race tickets. If you don't know what the duck race is, it's a fundraiser for CARES, which is a food pantry and charity that serves people in the Farmington Hills area. And Karen Duguay will be selling them at coffee hour.
Voluntelling, is that what? All right, does anybody else have an announcement today? Okay. All right, so for our chalice lighting, it comes from Reverend David Breeden. It's called Into the Circle. We gather into the circle. We gather into this circle of care to dream, to envision, to embody and achieve the compassion we dream, the justice we envision, the dignity of each in an ever-growing circle of love and justice. Thank you, Nathan. Please join me in reciting our UUCF mission statement, which can be found in your order of service. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, and live with compassion. Today we're going to have a litany of gathering instead of a meditation, and it's called Summer Meditation by Robert T. Weston. You can find it in the gray hymnal. It's number 547 toward the back. And I'm going to read the standard text, so if you are willing and able, if you could read the italicized text. Now blows the wind with soft, relaxing warmth. The sun beats down, the schools are out. Children swarm in the playgrounds and the streets, and eager city folk, vacation-bound, crowd the broad highways. The lakes and seashores lose their solitude, and all the world seems turned to carnival. What of ourselves? There could be now deep peace, a time for soul searching. To sift the true from false and in the things of doubt. The sun beats down. It is a time for pause. Even the trees seem resting for a time, as if to meditate and gather strength for the most strenuous times. And shall not we? Here's the unfinished clay, half molded, that still waits on us. To think what we have been, and as we are, still yet have to become. Your joy is multiplied in its sharing. Your sorrow is lightened in its sharing. The stories that are shared weave together to strengthen our community as we care for one another. You are welcome to pick up a stone or stones from the table, infuse it or charge it with your joy or sorrow, and place it in the singing bowl, where its energy will ripple out to be held by all of us. If you'd like to verbally share something important on your heart, please come up and speak directly into the microphone. All are welcome to participate in any of these ways. intentions that rest in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, one for the joys, one for the sorrows, and one for the strength of the gathered community that can support you and bring you peace. Thank you, Nathan. Please remain seated for our meditation song from the Gray Hymnal, number 352, Find a Stillness.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, in the Spirit, give me power. I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit, give me power. I will find true harmony.
Today's reading is from Matthew Desmond. The rest of us, on the other hand, we members of the protected classes have grown increasingly dependent on our welfare programs. In 2020, the federal government spent more than $193 billion on homeowner subsidies, a figure that far exceeded the amount spent on direct housing assistance for low-income families, $53 billion. Most families who enjoy those subsidies have six-figure incomes and are white. Poor families, lucky enough to live in government-owned apartments, often have to deal with mold and even lead paint, while rich families are claiming the mortgage interest deduction on first and second homes. The lifetime limit for cash welfare to poor parents is 5 years, but families claiming the mortgage interest deduction may do so for the length of the mortgage, typically 30 years. A 15-story public housing tower and a mortgaged suburban home are both government subsidized, but only one looks and feels that way. If you count all public benefits offered by the federal government, America's welfare state, as a share of its gross domestic product, is the second biggest in the world after France's. But that's true only if you include things like government-subsidized retirement benefits provided by employers, student loans, and 529 college savings plans, child tax credits, and homeowner subsidies, benefits disproportionately flowing to Americans well above the poverty line. If you put aside these tax breaks and judge the United States solely by the share of its GDP to programs allocated to programs directed at low-income citizens, then our investment in poverty reduction is much smaller than that of other rich nations. The American welfare state is lopsided. Gregory Smith is a dedicated resident of Farmington, Michigan, and shares his life journey with his beloved wife, Dawn Smith, and 3 wonderful children, Greg, Grace, and Graylin. With a remarkable career spanning over 2 decades in the field of education, Greg's passion for fostering inclusivity and equity within the school system has been the hallmark of his journey. Over the past 18 years, he has been a key contributor to the Farmington Public Schools, taking on roles as high school teacher, middle school teacher, dual diagnosis program facilitator, assistant principal, lead principal, and currently he serves as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Greg's impact extends beyond the school walls as he generously shares his knowledge and expertise as a faculty member at Wayne State University in the College of Education. His unwavering commitment to the community is further evident through his active involvement with organizations like the Farmington Hills Youth and Family Foundation, where he serves to uplift and support those around him. Welcome, Greg.
All right, good morning. So glad to be here. Just listening sometimes to the introductions, I'm just like, wow, you know. A few, within the last week, a few adjustments to that bio. Just last week, and this is really interesting how it went down, but I will be spending my last week in Farmington Public Schools this week. Last week, and I hope there's not a staff member here, but last week I was named the superintendent of Lincoln Consolidated Schools. So super excited about that. And what's peculiar about that is when I went for the role and I spoke with the firm that was doing the hiring, he said, I'm gonna give you a recommendation. And I said, what's that? He says, I want you to leave diversity, equity, and inclusion off your application. I did not. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve in a community very similar to Farmington in many ways of diversity, but one that puts the centering of people ahead of the agenda. And so super excited about that. And then I also, the piece in which you were adding about the welfare system. You know, I tell individuals that I'm born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And immediately they think the college, they think the hospital, but they don't think poverty. They don't think a mom and a dad at the age of 24 having 8 children. They don't think, that this person you're looking at slept in a bedroom with his 3 brothers until he was in his early teens. They don't see the violence. They don't see the lack. In fact, it was like a stigma of coming up in the welfare system. And the one thing I remember about that was mom working 3 jobs, dad working 3 jobs. And I recall every 3rd Saturday, my dad would pack his things and leave the house. And my mother would go into the closets and go into the bathrooms and remove all male razors and things of that nature, right? And I noticed it. I was 5, 6, 7 at the time. And then one day I asked my mom, I said, why does dad leave? Like, where does he go? And she says, well, honey, the way our system is brought up, if I'm going to receive services to make sure that you all are fed, I cannot have a man in the house. And so 2 women would come to our house, and they had these long trench coats. I'm telling you. And they would come in and they would say the same thing. Hey, how you doing? My mother's name is Leola. If she pops through the door, her and my father said they may come today, so that's them. But her name is Leola, and they would sit down, and then one would say, oh, can I hang my coat? And then they would go to the closet and they would inspect the closet. And the other one would say, oh my gosh, I have to use the restroom. Can I go to the restroom? And they would open up the medicine cabinet and look at all the pill bottles and see if they can find shaving cream and things of that nature. And I remember and I wonder what that must have felt like for my parents. And here it is, years later, that in an assembly such as this, we are talking about the truths and the real life lived experiences that we had to endure in silence. And yet there are individuals like yourselves that take that truth forward to make it a different experience for the next. And so I'm just grateful, and my heart is filled. I will tell you this before I get started. I misread the email, and I prepared a little longer, but I'm going to chop it down to my 20-minute time period. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. But before I do, I want to acknowledge Reverend Karen Madrone for this opportunity. This is my second time here, and I absolutely delight in it. Mr. Sanchez, Brother Sanchez, thank you for the water, and the congregation here as well. What I understand is that in the month of August, you all are lifting up the term justice. And we don't necessarily use that word lightly. In fact, it feels like our world, ever present than before, is fighting for justice on so many different platforms. And so, as again, I understand it, this particular church focus for August will be justice. And I looked up the word justice, and what I found was just behavior or treatment. Justice is dignity restored. But restored to who? Justice is equity in action. Justice is what love looks like in public. Justice is making things right. And I beg the question, making them right for who? Justice is hearing the silent and seeing the invisible, which led me to my piece, a message from the margins. Justice doesn't flow from the center, but from the edge. Maya Angelou wrote that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story on the inside of you. And so I'm honestly finishing or starting this how I want to finish. And the truth is that we all bear a narrative, a story, to either put individuals in captivity, excuse me, or to set them free. We all bear a narrative to either put ourselves in captivity or to set ourselves free. And so I want you to consider your narrative as I go through this piece around a message from the margins. And so the first thing I want to do is talk about what the margins are, right? They're not necessarily geographical areas or economic statuses, but the margins that I'm talking about are spiritual, and they're social. And there are places where people are unseen, unheard, and underestimated. It's not predicated on the color of your skin or the texture of your hair or the color of your eyes. Many of us are marginalized even in our own homes. Many of us are marginalized even in our own communities. For example, the child who always is called disruptive instead of misunderstood. The immigrant who is called illegal rather than a neighbor. The trans youth who becomes a political debate and dehumanized instead of being called first a person. The veteran whose wounds are made invisible the time they step out of service. Or the aging parent who day by day seems to become more and more forgotten by the people in which they love most. Margins are spaces where people like you and me feel unseen, unheard, and underestimated. Let me ask you a question. I actually need you guys to really reflect in some of this, and that is, who decides who belongs in the margins and who stays in the center? Who makes that decision? It's another question. Who determines the worth of the people that are on the margins? Is it the person that says, hey, you've got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, right? That merit will lead the way. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap. And that sounds good, like if my boots had laces, right? That sounds great. And I'm telling you, I will give all the effort I can, but the boots that I've been given, they fit a little too big. And so I'm trying to size them. I'm trying to fit them to size. And I promise you I will be on my way. Is it the person that says, well, hold on, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And you say to them, well, I was given one. I'm trying to find the other. But listen, I'll make my way there. Half-stepping the entire way. We call that meritocracy, right? Or is it the one who claims that all people are equal and deserve rights and opportunities? We call that egalitarianism. But in this particular case, I'm going to share this, and this is from the bottom of my heart. As I have seen our world, our nation, our community over the last several years in a different light. You cannot conquer what you secretly agree with. I'll say that again. You cannot conquer what you secretly agree with. And so we have these thoughts, but all of these things need to be brought into question when we talk about the marginalized. And again, I'm not talking about a specific people. I'm not talking about a specific belief or texture, all of that. Everyone in here has experienced that. And so I want you to consider this, and this might stress a couple of people out, so just take a deep breath. But I want to talk about stoplights versus roundabouts. You guys good with that? All right, so the stoplight is going to be like more of like the meritocracy, right? I'll go when the system says that I've earned the right to go. These systems are like stoplights because they're rigid, they're linear, and they're externally controlled, but yet we follow them religiously. Access is controlled by predefined criteria, right? We know this in our worlds: degrees, titles, resumes, credentials, cultural norms. And I'm going to put this piece out there for free. Whatever is common is culture. Think about it. Think about your own homes. Whatever is common, the common belief in your own home, that is the culture, right? So we're back at the stoplight, right? And at the stoplight, someone else decides when you move and where you belong. It also assumes that everyone that has the same kind of car or a car, same gas level, same road conditions, and so on. And I think this is so interesting because this morning I found out that I've got like a semi-flat tire outside. So when I get done, I got to go plug a tire. Speaking of stoplights. The truth is that those at the center of power set the rules, then act surprised when others can't follow them. Let's consider the roundabout, or egalitarianism. We each yield to observe and make space for one another to move safely and together. A roundabout requires mutual respect, real-time awareness, and shared responsibility. I'm not talking about the person that just doesn't look at anything and they zoom right into the roundabout and you're like, oh my goodness, right? I'm not talking about that. But a roundabout, there's no central authority directing traffic. When you see each other, when directing traffic, when you see each other, not when you or a machine tells you to go. It values context over rules, relationships over ranks, and cooperation over control. Egalitarianism works the same way. It doesn't assume that you earn dignity, it assumes that you already have it, and so do others. And yet I ask you to reflect, is your mindset or is your thinking more like a stoplight or is it more like a roundabout? Again, I'm also going to put in front of you that you cannot conquer what you secretly agree with. So now that we've talked about margins for a second, let's also talk about who draws the margins. Have you guys ever considered this? Like, who draws the scope of the margins and said, okay, well, you're outside, you're inside, right? And in my experiences, margins are drawn intentionally, or sometimes unconsciously, by four things. Margins are drawn by power, culture, convenience, and silence. But we all live in them. Power says, you're not allowed in this space. It guards the gates and it builds these invisible walls that so many of us just keep bumping into. And you're like, why can't I cross over? Because there's like this power structure that you can't necessarily see, but it is understood by so many. Culture says, you're not what we expected. It labels what's normal and then it shames what's out of our scope of normalcy or what we would determine to be normal. And that takes me back to my time here last year where I talked about, what did I talk about? Epistemology, right? And this swinging of knowledge and truth and where we find ourselves on that scope. Convenience says your pain disrupts my comfort. In other words, quiet your truth so I don't have to feel it. Have you ever walked into a space where you needed to shrink and you felt like you had to become small so that you could fit? Day by day, we live in these spaces and we don't necessarily know exactly what to do. And silence, lastly, silence says nothing. But the echo of the nothingness is louder than anything. Have you ever needed a friend, a family member, a colleague, a stranger to show up for you? It was so interesting. Yesterday, I was down at my office, downtown Detroit, and I was meeting with a practitioner group in Oakland County. That's where we kind of go off the reserve if we want to have like real discussions. And there was a guy outside the office, and he says to me, he's trying to stop people as they go by, right? And I just love people, and so I'm seeing these people just move past him without saying a word. And so the guy comes as I'm walking because I'm helping a friend to park on the street, and he says, "Hey, can you help me find a job?" And I was like, man, that's got to be some type of courage to ask a perfect stranger if I can help him find employment, right? Like, can you imagine, let's put on our hat of empathy. Can you imagine being in that situation? The truth is that some of us have. It just wasn't outside of a street corner in downtown Detroit. And so what was interesting is I sat and I started to think about it, and I was with my partner who had actually started to ignore and continue walking. And I had stopped, I had greeted the fellow, and he said, well, I've just served 23 years in prison, and I'm out, and I'm trying to readjust myself to life. And I just can't find my path. And I don't want you to give me anything. I don't need anything. There's a lot of fight still left in me. I just need some direction. And so I literally sat down next to him as my friend is like, what are you doing? And the other person's parking. And I started to truly think, like, if this was me, what would I want? And so the cool thing is I know a good friend of mine that I play college football with that owns a barbecue spot called Smokey G's. And if you're ever on Atwater, like downtown near the water, it's that space that where you can walk in and out and there's parks around it. It's next to the Aretha Franklin or the Shane Park Theater. That's Greg Sims. And I called Sims and I said, hey, you got that grill going? And he's like, oh, Smith, I got the grill going. I said, hey, I'm sending you someone in 45 minutes. He will share his story, and I need you to act on his behalf. And so this morning, I haven't checked it, but I got a message from Greg. And I'm hoping that things worked out for that gentleman. Here's the deal that, again, my silence in that situation doesn't move anything. It actually sustains every lie that he's been told, every lie that or the secret pillar that society builds up, that when we make mistakes, we can't recover from them. Who am I to determine his worth because he spent 23 years in a place? I could have spent 23 years in prison inside of my own head, or hating someone for 23 years, or wanting to harm someone for 23 years, and yet I'm here. And so that's what I'm talking about relative to like a message from the margins in itself. The ones we often silence are the very ones holding the key to healing. not just for ourselves, but for others. History has shown us that every great movement toward justice, toward truth, towards healing begins with someone who has tried to be silenced, or the world was trying to silence. And we live, again, in a space where any great work happens from the edge, but that great work often starts with listening. We live in a time of great noise and a lot of distractions. I don't know if you guys can, it's a lot going on, right? I got to stay focused. But very little hearing. Listening from the margin requires more than empathy. It requires unlearning. Something that some of us are unwilling to do. And some of us are willing to do, we just don't know how. And so there was this author, and he recently passed away, but he was a genius, right? And his work lives on, and I'm going to share a bit about his work. His name is Dr. Daniel Kahneman. Anybody familiar with Daniel Kahneman's work? And so he talks about like these two minds that we have, right? And one mind, and so system number one, it's what got us here today. What do we got to do? We got to get to church. We got to put on clothes. We got to make sure that we're fed. We got this, that, and the other. And we make, maybe you're talking to your spouse. I like what you're wearing. I don't like what you're wearing. Okay, I've got to get gas, and we're going to have food. So it's that mind that just gets us through life. It navigates our period. A lot of it is our subconscious mind. A lot of it is automatic, and we use it 85% of the time. That's how we navigate life. But then in system two, it's a slower process. It's very conscious. It's effort-oriented. It's slow, and it's reliable. But we only use it 15% of the time. And so I can't go into that a bit further. I will say this, that when you're listening to your neighbor, or you're listening to a spouse, or you're listening to a friend, do your best to use the 15%. Listen and talk slow. Listen well. Because if you listen hard enough or you listen well enough, you're going to hear a message from your friend or that person that's coming from the margins. And they're truly calling for your support, or they're calling for your help. When the margins speak, the centers have to move, or the center has to move. We often ask those at the edge to come closer to the middle, to speak up or to tone down or to fit in or to wait their turn. But the real question is this: what would it mean if the center had to shift? What would it mean for us to decenter ourselves and recenter justice? What does that look like in your life? You know, the teachings of this particular church is that every person has inherent worth and dignity. But that principle becomes real when we apply it to those that have been told in one shape or another, or one form or another, they don't belong. The movement, any change, it doesn't start from the center. It always starts from the margins. It has to start from this place of hurt or pain. You know, one of the things that was shared with me, as there's like 200 people watching me interview last week, or it felt like 200. And one of the individuals came to me and they said, "You speak so gently." And I said to them, "You have no idea how much violence and pain it took for me to speak this gentle. That I've been crying out since I've been a little boy. I've been trying to make sense of the world since a little boy." And so it's important that we understand that any movement starts from that place, and you feel marginalized in that sense. But transformation comes from the outside in. We know this in many testimonies, whether it be biblical, people walking the earth, same thinking, maybe not, and so on and so forth. We know that this transformation comes from the outside in, right? I can speak of Moses, who was raised outside of the palace, or Jesus, who was born in a manger and not necessarily a mansion. We can talk about Buddha, who leaves the palace to find the truth under a tree, or even Harriet Tubman, who found freedom in the center of the woods, in the whispers of the night. We are called not to be saviors in a sense, but we're called to be listeners, learners, and co-conspirators. And so I want to leave you with this. Margins are where God begins again with the world. That came from Walter Brudgman. And if the margins are where God begins again with the world, then maybe it's because the margins are also where our deepest calling awaits. As Brudgman wrote, the place God calls you to is often a place of deep gladness and deep hunger in the world, and that's where it meets. The margins aren't just a place of loss, they're a place of possibilities. And I'm a witness to that. Many of you are witnesses to that. They're not just for them, but they're for all of us. So, let us listen deeply. Let us talk slowly. Let us yield our certainty. Let us draw the circle wider, not just by theory or belief, but by practice. Let us tell the truth even when it trembles our voice. And let us remember, your margins matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. I think that really gives us a lot to think about, and I love your stories. You meet so many fascinating people and have just a really great way of telling a story that is amazing. So, our offering words today come from Kayla Parker. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and for our world than they could have done alone. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this congregation. May we give in love and in hope. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving as the ushers come among you to accept the gifts of the congregation. Thank you. Please join me in reciting the offertory blessing that can be found in your order of service. To the work of creating beloved community within and beyond these walls, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings. Please rise as you're willing and able to sing our hymn from the Teal hymnal, number 153, How Could Anyone?
How
Closing words today are from Brian Stevenson. I think sometimes when you're trying to do justice work, when you're trying to make a difference, when you're trying to change the world, the thing you need to do is get close enough to people who are falling down. Get close enough to people who are suffering, close enough to people who are in pain, who've been discarded and disfavored, to get close enough to wrap your arms around them and affirm their humanity and dignity.